A young man lost everything: his family, his freedom, and his past. Now, he fights through a world of crime and betrayal to reclaim the one thing he's never stopped searching for: his sister. The clock is ticking, and the underworld will stop at nothing to keep them apart. The story begins with a line of slaves trudging forward under the watchful eyes of their captors. Among them is our protagonist, his head bowed as he silently reflects on his misery. Life was always a succession of being taken away. I lost my parents, and now my freedom has been stolen too. Later, he is thrown into a dimly lit cell alongside his younger sister. As they sit in oppressive silence, footsteps echo in the distance. Two men approach the bars, their shadows looming over the siblings. One of the men peers through the bars, his gaze locking onto the girl. "Is that an albino?" he asks with an unsettling curiosity. Alarmed, the protagonist immediately steps in front of his sister, shielding her. The man smirks and turns to his companion. "I'm taking the albino girl today," he declares. The other man nods in agreement. The protagonist's eyes widen in fury, his body trembling with rage. "Damn it," he roars. "If you mess with my younger sister, I'll kill you." The first man's smirk twists into a sneer. Without warning, he lashes out with a brutal kick, sending the protagonist stumbling backward. "You don't understand your situation," the man growls, his voice dripping with menace. He kicks the boy again, harder this time, as he mocks him. "You want to kill me? Say it again, you little bastard." The girl, sobbing, rushes forward to shield her brother, but the second man stops the beating. "Enough," he says firmly. "If you keep at it, the kid won't survive. We don't need him dead, yet." Turning to the protagonist, the second man crouches and speaks with a chilling calmness. "Your sister will go to a good place. You should be grateful." The protagonist's fists clench, his teeth grinding as he glares up at the man. Fury blazes in his eyes. "Look at that anger." The first man chuckles darkly. He grabs the protagonist by the hair and yanks his head up. "Look me in the eyes," he commands. "Answer me, or you'll die right here." The protagonist glares at him, defiance burning bright. "Screw you," his voice steady even as he trembles with pain. Then, with every ounce of defiance he has left, he spits in the man's face. For a moment, there is silence. The man wipes his face with slow, deliberate movements, his expression turning colder. "Take the girl," he orders his companion. "I'll teach this brat some respect." "Yes, Mr. Hyungnim," the other man replies without hesitation. The second man reaches for the girl, grabbing her roughly and slinging her over his shoulder. Her terrified screams echo in the cell. "Brother, help me," she cries, tears streaming down her face. "Leave her alone," the protagonist bellows, his voice cracking with desperation. Hyungnim chuckles as he looks down at him. "You should worry about yourself," he sneers, raising his foot for another merciless kick. 2 years passed in the darkness of the cell. The boy lay on the cold ground, motionless, his body battered and his spirit crushed. A rough thud snapped him out of his daze. A bowl of food was tossed onto his face. He stared at it unmoving, his mind heavy with despair. "What's left of my life?" he thought, his heart aching under the weight of his losses. Outside the bars, the guard spoke in hushed but audible tones. "This guy is useless, isn't he? Keeping him here for 2 years was already too long. Let's just get rid of him." The boy heard every word, but their voices barely registered. He remained lost in his thoughts. "My life, it's been stripped of everything, little by little, until almost nothing remains." Suddenly, chaos erupted outside. Alarms blared, and frantic shouts filled the air. "It's an attack. We're under attack." The boy opened his eyes and slowly pushed himself up, his heart racing as he heard the clash of weapons and panicked screams. Through the bars, he saw guards being hurled into the air, their bodies crashing lifelessly to the ground. Amid the chaos, a figure appeared, a lone man standing tall and unscathed before the bars. His presence was commanding, almost otherworldly. The man looked down at him and asked firmly, "Are you dead? If you're alive, then get up." The boy hesitated but extended his hand. The man grasped it firmly, pulling him to his feet. For the first time in 2 years, the boy felt the faintest flicker of hope. Kim Shin carried the boy out of the cell and away from the carnage. "I am Kim Shin," the man introduced himself as he studied the boy. "I wandered along the Halong River with my master. In that process, I ended up saving you." From that day forward, the boy's life took a new turn. He began living with Kim Shin and his master, training with them and slowly rebuilding himself from the ashes of his despair. Each day brought a new challenge and gradually, he grew stronger. But as he grew accustomed to this new life, Kim Shin disappeared without a word. When they met again, the boy was stunned to see what had become of his savior. Kim Shin was no longer the same man. He had become a killer. "Why did you become a killer?" the boy asked, his voice heavy with confusion and pain. Kim Shin paused for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, with a calm yet solemn tone, he replied, "There are things I want to achieve." The boy hesitated before asking, "If you become a killer, can you also reclaim what was taken from you?" Kim Shin's gaze hardened. "It is an act of accumulating karma, and that karma will return, one way or another." The boy listened in silence, absorbing his words. Kim Shin turned to leave, but stopped, glancing back over his shoulder. "However," he said, his voice steady and resolute, "if reclaiming what you've lost requires bearing all the consequences that come with it, then become a killer." With that, Kim Shin walked away, leaving the boy alone to wrestle with the weight of his words. The scene shifts to a dimly lit bar, its atmosphere heavy with the smell of alcohol and tension. A man and a blonde-haired girl sat at a corner table, their eyes fixed on the entrance. The boy, now no longer a boy, but a hardened young man, stepped inside. His sharp gaze swept the room, and as he walked forward, his thoughts echoed in his mind. The path to becoming a killer wasn't easy. It demanded everything from me: pain, sacrifice, and blood. But I endured it. I had to reclaim what was taken from me, and to ensure nothing would ever be stolen from me again. I willingly walked the path of Azura. A year had passed since he first chose this path. The scene shifts to the dim glow of a street lamp outside a quiet street. A sleek red car idled nearby, and by its side stood a man and a blonde-haired woman, both waiting with calm anticipation. As he drew closer, the man puts his arms pockets and smirked. "You've changed so much in a year," he remarked, his voice steady and impressed. "I hardly recognize you." The blonde woman turned her gaze to the boy, her lips curling into a knowing smile. "I have to admit," she said, her tone laced with satisfaction, "Tigro has an eye for talent." The boy stopped a few steps away. The blonde woman stepped forward, her smile widening. "Congratulations on joining the organization, Copoka," she said warmly, addressing him with his new title. His bloody daggers hanging loosely in his hands. His clothes were tattered and soaked with blood, both his own and that of others, but his stance was firm, exuding an unyielding strength. The boy stood tall, his mind calm but resolute, as he reflected silently. "This is how I became a killer." A few years later, the scene opens with a man crawling on the ground, his body battered and broken. Trembling, he gasps, "Who the fuck are you?" The boy, now a man, stepped forward, his boots leaving bloody footprints as he walked over the dead bodies scattered around him. His voice was calm, but there was a sharp edge to it as he spoke. "Wow, that's a bit disappointing." He walked up to the man, towering over him with an unsettling calm. The man's eyes widened as he began to recognize him. The boy's grin slowly spread across his face. "You already forget me?" The man froze, his mind racing as the memories came rushing back. This was the boy whose sister he had taken years ago. A wicked grin spread across the boy's face. "Yeah, it's been a really long time, hasn't it?" he said, his tone dripping with menace. "Where did you sell my younger sister?" With a trembling voice, the man gasped, "Your younger sister?" The boy's grin grew wider as he coldly confirmed, "Right, my younger sister." The man stuttered, still trying to escape the boy's gaze. "The albino girl. How would I know about something that happened several years ago?" That was the last straw. The boy's rage exploded as he slammed his foot into the man's stomach, sending him sprawling back to the ground. He grabbed the man's hair, forcing him to look up at him. His voice was like ice as he spoke. "Seems like you're not grasping the situation well. If you don't answer me, you will die here." The man, trembling and broken, choked out the word, "Hawker." The boy's hand shot out like lightning, slashing the man's face with a cruel, practiced motion. "Speak properly," the boy warned, his voice a low growl. "Next time, I'll cut your head off instead." The man, desperate now, barely managed to speak. I sell in Hong Kong." The boy's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering in his mind. "Are you sure?" He paused for a moment, then thought to himself, "Yeah, even if I ask more, there won't be an answer." Without another word, the boy raised his dagger and stabbed the man in the chest. The man's eyes widened in shock as he crumpled to the ground. As the life drained from the man's body, the boy turned and walked away, his boots leaving a trail of blood behind him. The silence around him was deafening, broken only by the sound of his steady footsteps. As he walked away from the scene, the boy's thoughts turned inward. Hong Kong. The scene shifts to a dimly lit room where a man stood holding a dagger in his hand. Before him, another man hung limply, his body suspended in the air, blood dripping steadily onto the floor. The tension in the room was palpable, a man respectfully, bowing slightly before speaking. "Mr. Ryukai," he addressed the figure with reverence. "I've just received news. The Hong Kong side is ready." Ryukai tilted his head slightly, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "Is that so?" he replied, his tone calm yet cold. Without hesitation, he raised the dagger and, with a swift, precise motion, severed the hanging man's head. The body fell lifelessly to the floor with a sickening thud. Blood splattered across the floor, the man holding out a clean towel with both hands. Ryukai took it casually and began wiping the blood off his hands, his movements deliberate and calculated. As he cleaned himself, he spoke with quiet authority, his voice filled with ambition. "Then let's begin the preparations," he said, his tone almost dismissive. He paused briefly before continuing, his eyes gleaming with determination. "It's time to become the master of the continent." The scene shifts to Hong Kong/Triad headquarters. Inside the Triad's grand headquarters, a man lifts a steaming cup of coffee and takes a deliberate sip. Two men sit in a room exuding power and tradition. One of them, Lu Wangsheng, the Triad's current dragon head. Wangsheng breaks the silence, his tone commanding. "How are the succession preparations?" Across from him, Lu Yuan, the Triad's next succeeding dragon head, sits at a table, his demeanor calm but focused. Yuan remains silent for a moment, gathering his thoughts. Finally he speaks. "We are preparing without any issue." Wangsheng places his cup down and looks directly at Yuan. "Since the leaders of all continental organizations are watching," he says gravely, "we must not miss even the smallest detail." Yuan nods slightly. "I will keep it in mind. Don't worry." He hesitates before continuing, his tone shifting slightly. "However, about what I mentioned before, what are your plans to do about it?" "I mean it's about Ryukai." Wangsheng stands, his movements deliberate and firm. No matter that he is an illegitimate child, he states firmly, he cannot miss the family's big event. Yuan rises from his chair as well, concern flickering in his voice. "But father," Wangsheng interrupts sharply, his voice cutting through Yuan's words. "If we can't even embrace that much, we won't be able to face the organization's leaders. You just focus on the succession preparations. I will handle Ryukai myself." Yuan clenches his fist tightly, frustration evident, but he bows his head respectfully. "Yes, Dragon Head," he replies, suppressing any further objections. A plane lands in Hong Kong, its roaring engines blending into the distant hum of a vibrant city. The protagonist, Copoka, steps out of the terminal wearing a sleek black outfit, his hands buried casually in his pockets. His piercing eyes scan the surroundings as he whispers to himself, his breath fogging slightly in the cool air. He mutters softly, almost inaudibly, "Let's see who's coming to pick me up." Meanwhile, in a speeding car weaving through the crowded streets of Hong Kong, Marina Iskra grips the steering wheel tightly, her frustration evident. She's on the phone with Lisa. The boy's name? Copoka, is it? She demands, her voice sharp. Lisa's voice comes through clearly. Yes, it's him, Copoka. Marina clenches her jaw and snaps. They say he's out of control. Why should I get tangled in personal matters instead of an official request? Lisa's reply is calm but firm. He's green, but we need someone of his caliber. Marina's fist slams the steering wheel, the sound echoing in the car. Are you serious? With the current Hong Kong situation, and you're asking me to babysit? Her voice rises as she warns, Fine, but I'll handle it moderately. You better manage things on your end, Lisa. Lisa sighs, her tone weary. I'll hang up now. Please, Marina. Wait a second, Lisa. Marina snaps, but the line goes dead. Gritting her teeth, she spits out, Damn it. The car accelerates even faster as she races toward the airport. By the river, Copoka sits on a bench, gazing at the shimmering city lights reflected on the water. He smirks and mutters to himself, Hong Kong, huh? It's livable. His moment of reflection is interrupted by a car screeching to a halt nearby, its headlights briefly blinding him. From the car steps Marina, her sharp heels clicking against the pavement. She approaches Copoka, her eyes scanning him up and down. You're younger than I thought, she remarks coolly. You're Copoka, right? Marina Iskra, East Asia Intelligence. Code name, Poison Toad. Copoka offers no response, merely watching her with a calm, yet unreadable expression. As they settle into Marina's car, she probes him. You came here looking for your younger sibling, didn't you? He nods slightly. Her voice turns firm. I hope you understand the rules. I can't help with personal matters. Sorry, but that's the way it is. Copoka stares out the window, his voice calm but detached. I know well. Marina exhales sharply. Good. But the situation here isn't good. You should have been briefed by Lisa. Wait, don't tell me you weren't told anything? Copoka tilts his head, his tone indifferent. What's not good about it? Marina sighs deeply, her fingers tapping the wheel. The Triads. Ever heard of them? A little, Copoka replies, his voice nonchalant. Marina's tone shifts, becoming grave. Hong Kong is the headquarters of the Triads. Their influence is absolute. The current dragon head is stepping down, and he's passing the position to his son. Tensions are high. It's a dangerous time. Don't get involved unnecessarily. Her frustration mounts as Copoka shrugs. So, Marina slams the brakes, the car jerking to a halt. She glares at him. It means don't cause trouble. Copoka stretches lazily. Got it. Ignoring her anger, he asks, Where are we heading? Marina relents, her tone softer but still sharp. You're looking for your sibling, right? I'll introduce you to someone who can help. Xing. Copoka smirks. Didn't you say you couldn't help? Guess I won you over already. Marina rolls her eyes. Don't misunderstand. This is so you can find her quickly and leave Hong Kong. Copoka leans back, amused. Is this Xing trustworthy? Her response is curt. My help ends here. Judge for yourself. As he steps out of the car, Marina warns, Be grateful for this much. And remember, this is Hong Kong, not Russia. Copoka glances back, smirking. Joy Jin. See you around. Marina watches him leave, muttering under her breath. Really untrustworthy. She drives off, her thoughts heavy. Copoka ventures into the dark streets, the faint echoes of the city growing distant. He arrives at a dimly lit building, hearing muffled voices from within. Entering cautiously, he finds two men in black suits roughing up a third man, slamming him against the wall. Whose orders are you following? One shouts. The victim stammers, I told you. I'm just an informant. Copoka interrupts coolly. Xing. The men whirl around, startled by his sudden presence. Marina sent me. She said you'd help me find someone, Copoka says, addressing the man against the wall. The man, bruised and battered, manages a weak nod. Yes, but as you can see, I'm a bit, ugh. One of the attackers slams him onto a table and turns to Copoka.
Hey.
You know this guy? Copoka's eyes narrow.
No.
I don't know him. The second man approaches threateningly. Then get lost, unless you want to die, you bestiardi. Copoka smirks, a chilling gleam in his eye. That's a bit difficult. I have business here. The man snarls, throwing a punch. Copoka sidesteps effortlessly, pulling a knife from his pocket. With a swift, fluid motion, he strikes. Blood sprays across the room as the first man collapses. The second man freezes in shock. Copoka turns toward him, flicking the blood from his blade. Sorry, but I'm in a hurry. Xing was shocked, his face pale as he stammered. Did he kill him? The second thug, now desperate, grabbed Xing, pressing a blade against his neck. Sweat trickled down his face as he used Xing as a human shield. His mind raced. He's no ordinary guy. He's a professional. He yelled at Copoka, his voice trembling. What the F***CK are you? But internally, his thoughts betrayed him. He used the knife without hesitation. He's not just some random guy, he's a pro. Copoka's expression remained cold as he replied, I told you, I have business over there. The thug, still gripping Xing, growled, Are you in cahoots with this bestiardi? Cutting him off, Copoka sneered, A guy who's about to die sure talks a lot. The thug froze, his mind clouded with fear and desperation. His appearance screams outsider, but putting aside his identity, getting out of this situation comes first. Attempting to bargain, the thug tightened his grip on Xing and shouted, I don't know what's going on, but it seems like you need this guy. If you don't want to see this bestiardi die, let's stop here for today. Xing, equally terrified, stuttered, Why yes, friend. I don't know what this is about, but it's not like today is the only day, right? Copoka stayed silent for a moment, feigning consideration. Then, stepping forward, he said calmly, Right. Today isn't the only day. Relieved, the thug exhaled. Yeah, good. Before he could finish, Copoka's blade flew with precision, striking the thug in the face. Blood splattered, and the thug collapsed to the ground, dead. Copoka wiped his hands, his voice cold and impatient. I told you, I'm in a hurry. Xing stood frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Both men left the room, stepping onto the dimly lit street. Xing lit a cigarette with shaky hands, taking a deep drag to calm his nerves. Seated on his haunches, Copoka remained silent. Xing glanced at him, exhaling smoke, and said, I've heard the stories. They say you're a Russian killer. Even so, I didn't know you were this reckless. Copoka frowned. What are you talking about? Xing's tone shifted, becoming serious. The two guys you killed, they were probably from the Triad. Copoka's eyes widened. The Triad? Xing nodded grimly. In Hong Kong, there are no fools who go against the Triads. I don't know how it is in Russia, but here, you'd better be careful. He flicked his cigarette to the ground and crushed it underfoot. Copoka ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Marina told me not to get involved with the Triads, but it's messed up from the start. Xing started walking, waving off Copoka's concern. Don't worry. Since I got some benefit from this, I'll clean up afterwards as a service. Turning back to Copoka, he asked, Now, this person you're looking for, you said they were sold to Hong Kong? Copoka nodded. That's right. About 5 years ago. An albino. She'd be around 20 now. Xing raised an eyebrow. What kind of relationship? Lover. Copoka hesitated before replying, I don't know anything else. Can you find her? Xing mulled it over, then smirked. It won't be easy. But since the age range and characteristics are clear, it's not impossible. Okay, let's try to find her. Relief flickered across Copoka's face, though he remained cautious. Xing flagged down a taxi and gestured for Copoka to get in. What about payment?
Copoka asked.
After a moment of silence, Xing replied with a sly grin. I need to watch you a bit more to see what kind of guy you are. Xing leaned in closer, his tones suddenly sharp. Take one request from me. When there's someone I want to kill, I'll tell you. Let's call it even with that. I find people for you, and you kill for me, okay? Opening the car door, Zhou Xing slid inside and grinned. Shall we start with Lan Kwai Fong? They arrived at the vibrant streets of Lan Kwai Fong, packed with people enjoying the nightlife. Zhou Xing handed Copoka new clothes, urging him to change his look. You look decent in this outfit, Zhou Xing commented. Copoka frowned. What does this have to do with finding someone? Zhou Xing chuckled. Everything. If I walk around with someone like you, people will think we're human traffickers. At a glasses shop, Zhou Xing handed Copoka a pair of sunglasses. We should also cover up those murderous eyes. Copoka put them on, catching his reflection in the car window. He smirked. Not bad. Their next stop was the Yuhong Bar Wildflower. Zhou Xing pointed to the entrance. This is the place. All women sold to Hong Kong pass through here. Inside, the bar was alive with music and dancers. Zhou Xing leaned in and whispered, We're here to find information. Act natural, like we're here for fun. I'll handle the madam. You take care of the clerk. The clerk?
Copoka asked.
Zhou Xing nodded. The girl. Since she was probably sold here, she might know something. As they entered the bar, Zhou Xing greeted the madam with feigned cheer. Long time no see. She turned, unimpressed. You're not dead yet? Zhou Xing grinned, ignoring her hostility. Come on, don't be so cold. Let's talk business. While Zhou Xing distracted the madam, Copoka sat on a couch, observing the scene. His thoughts churned. So, they get sold to places like this. A young woman approached, holding a drink. She sat beside him, her voice dripping with seduction. What a cute oppa. Copoka stiffened, remembering Zhou Xing's advice. Act natural, naturally dig for information. But before he could adjust, the bar doors burst open. Cars screeched to a halt outside, and a line of guards entered, forming a path. A man stepped out, his bald head gleaming under the streetlights. He exhaled a cloud of smoke and smiled. Parang Gaore, Guangzhou branch executive of the Triad. The next chapter opens with a slow zoom-in on a glass resting on a table. Inside, ice cubes clink softly as alcohol swirls within. The camera pans out, revealing a bar counter where Zhou Xing and Madame sit on opposite stools. The bar is dimly lit, the warm golden glow of hanging lamps casting shadows that dance on their faces. Zhou Xing quietly pours alcohol into his glass, the sound of liquid filling the silence between them. Madame takes a sip from her drink, her expression sharp as she breaks the stillness. You didn't just come to help me sell alcohol, she remarks, her tone piercing. What's your real point? Zhou Xing meets her gaze, his expression unreadable. He remains silent for a moment, his hand steady as he swirls the liquid in his glass. Then, without preamble, he asks, Do you still accept new female workers these days? Madame freezes, her drink halfway to her lips. Her eyes narrow, a spark of anger flashing within them. Placing the glass back on the counter with a deliberate motion, she leans forward slightly. What are you talking about? She demands. When Zhou Xing offers no immediate response, her temper flares. She slams her glass onto the counter, the alcohol spilling slightly over the rim. I've told you several times, she snaps, her voice rising. I gave up that kind of business a long time ago. Zhou Xing, unfazed by her outburst, takes a measured sip from his glass. Setting it down, he speaks calmly, his voice devoid of emotion. Recently, it seemed like it started again, though. Madame exhales sharply, the sound tinged with frustration. She pours herself another drink, her hand trembling slightly. Her shoulders tense as she takes a long sip before responding. I don't know, she mutters, her voice quieter but no less firm. Don't ask me. I'm not the owner anymore. Zhou Xing's brow furrows. What? He asks, leaning in. Since when? Madame's lips press into a thin line as she closes her eyes briefly. When she opens them, she speaks with an air of finality. It's been a while. Zhou Xing processes her words in silence, his mind racing. Picking up his glass, He clinks it lightly against hers in an almost absent-minded toast. Then who's the owner now? He asks. Madame tilts her head, a wry smile playing at her lips. You'll know if I tell you, she counters. Rising from her seat, she stretches and adjusts her jacket. Anyway, are you done with your business? She asks, her tone curt. Without waiting for an answer, she begins to walk away. Then I'll get up now. Zhou Xing's voice halts her in her tracks. I'm looking for a woman, he says, his words deliberate. Reaching into his jacket, he pulls out a neatly bound stack of cash. Placing it on the counter, he continues, she was sold to Hong Kong about 5 years ago. An albino about 15 years old at the time. Madame stops, her back still turned to him. She glances over her shoulder, her gaze lingering on the money. Her lips curl into a faint, almost predatory smile. Turning back, she retakes her seat, her eyes now locked onto his. Well, she drawls, does anything come to mind? Zhou Xing leans forward slightly, his expression intense. Madame exhales deeply, her hand reaching for the glass once more. It's too late, she says finally, shaking her head. The new owner disposed of all the records. Zhou Xing slides the money across the counter toward her. You said you quit, he presses. But this is the last one. So please help. Madame regards him for a long moment, her gaze flickering between the money and his face. Finally, she lets out a soft, mocking laugh. You're really being difficult, she remarks, rising once more. Walking away, she speaks over her shoulder. While running the business, there was only one albino child who came in. Zhou Xing sits up straighter, his interest piqued. Madame pauses, her hand on a drawer. But I suddenly remember sending her back because she was terribly disobedient. Retrieving a file from the counter, she places it before him. There are always people looking for them, you know. Who's looking for her? The friend outside. Zhou Xing replies without hesitation. You mean him? She asks, arching an eyebrow. That's right, Zhou Xing confirms. The scene transitions to Copoka sitting at a small table in the corner of the bar. The clerk girl, visibly emotional, finishes recounting her story. Leaning against his shoulder, she sighs. That's how I ended up here. Copoka's expression darkens, his thoughts clearly elsewhere. I see, he murmurs. The girl looks up at him, her eyes searching his face. Don't make that face, she says softly. This place is decent enough. Her words trigger a flood of memories for Copoka. He sees his younger sister being dragged away by faceless men, her screams echoing in his mind. A decent place. If Gina were still around, she'd be about the same age. Before he can say more, Zhou Xing approaches, breaking the moment. You've been having quite a good time by yourself, he remarks, his tone teasing. I guess you're the type who's weak for women. Ignoring the comment, Copoka's attention shifts as Zhou Xing hands him a photograph. Is this the right person? Zhou Xing asks. Taking the photo, Copoka's breath catches. His hands tremble as he stares at the image. Gina, he whispers, his voice breaking. How is it? Zhou Xing asks. Are you coming to your senses now? Slamming his hands on the table, Copoka's voice rises with urgency. Where is she now? Before Zhou Xing can respond, the atmosphere shifts. Heavy footsteps echo through the bar as Parangare and his gang enter, their presence commanding attention. Zhou Xing stiffens, instinctively pulling Copoka toward the exit. Let's leave for now, he whispers. But Copoka resists, his voice firm. No, right now. Madam, visibly trembling, greets Gaore with forced cheer. Ga Joriai, what brings you here without notice? Joriai's eyes sweep the room, landing on the clerk girl. A smirk plays on his lips. On a good day, you can't miss out on women and a drink, he declares, grabbing her wrist. Bring out the best alcohol, and I'll have this woman as my attendant. Madame hesitates, her fear evident. As she complies, Joriai's gaze falls on the photograph left on the table. His expression hardens as he picks it up, his thoughts racing. This woman definitely White Dragon. How is this possible? Zhou Xing, still hiding near the exit, watches closely. So he's the new owner, he mutters to himself. Joriai's temper flares as he interrogates the clerk and madam about the photo. Violence erupts as he strikes both women, demanding answers. Copoka's rage finally boils over. He storms into the room, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Hey, you baldy bestiardi. That's mine, so bring it here." Gare turns, surprised but amused. "You're the bestiardi this person was talking about," he sneers. Copoka's eyes blaze, with fury. "I said bring the photo. Why are you looking for her?" Gare presses, his tone mocking. The room seems to freeze as Copoka's voice rises, raw with emotion. "She's my younger sister. You fking besti *RDH. Copoka stood firm, his eyes blazing with fury as he faced Parangare. Joriai's face twisted with disbelief. "Younger sister?" he repeated, his tone laced with skepticism. His mind raced. "Family? That can't be." Finally, he scoffed. "You sure can spout bullsh *T well." Copoka's anger only deepened. His fists clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "It seems like you're the one spouting bullsh *T, he retorted, his voice colder than the sharpest blade. Without breaking eye contact, Gare slipped the photograph into the inside pocket of his coat. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing into fiery slits. "I'll ask for the last time. Why are you looking for her?" Copoka's body trembled, barely containing the rage boiling within. "What reason do I need to look for my sister? You bestiardi?" His words cut through the tension like a serrated edge. The atmosphere grew heavier. Joriai's manager, dressed immaculately in white, couldn't restrain himself any longer. He bellowed, "You! Insolent!" The manager moved to attack, but Gare silenced him with a single raised hand. Copoka, undeterred, began walking toward Gare, his presence cold and menacing. His steps were slow, deliberate, and filled with a deadly resolve. The guards stood frozen, too shocked to intervene as Copoka's voice reverberated through the room. "You!" He stopped just a foot away, locking eyes with Gare. "What's your relationship with my sister?" Joriai's lip curled into a smirk, his voice dripping with condescension. "You're looking for White Dragon, but don't know about our existence?" Copoka's glare hardened. "Is it because you're a pig bestiardi?" His voice rose into a furious roar. "You *King can't understand what people say." Outside the room, Xing stood silently, his eyes wide with shock as he eavesdropped on the escalating confrontation. "This crazy bestiardi," he thought, barely believing the spectacle unfolding before him. "What? Are you having a fit over my sister? Say something, you baldy." Copoka's taunt cut deep, and veins bulged on Joriai's forehead as his fury reached its peak. With a shout, Gare unleashed a powerful punch aimed directly at Copoka's head. But Copoka moved like a shadow, dodging the blow effortlessly. Joriai's eyes widened in disbelief. He dodged it? The realization hit him like a freight train. Copoka, meanwhile, drew a sleek blade from his back pocket, gripping it tightly. "Turn on your blinker when you come in," he mocked. Joriai's smirk returned, albeit more cautious this time. "So, you're not just a small fry after all." He clenched his fists again, his voice a growl. "In any case, I'll have to tear that insolent mouth of yours first." Copoka's grip on his blade tightened. "Why does this pig bestiardi keep oinking?" he shot back. The air between them was thick with tension as the two men locked eyes, their mutual hatred palpable. They were seconds away from clashing when Joriai's manager suddenly stepped in, holding out a phone. "It's Emmer Mariong," the manager announced, his voice trembling slightly. Joriai's fiery gaze shifted to the phone, his frustration evident as he took it. His movements slow and deliberate, he pressed the phone to his ear. "It's me," he said, his voice low. Copoka's eyes followed Gare suspiciously, wondering what was happening. Meanwhile, Joriai's expression hardened further as the voice on the other end of the line spoke. He gave a signal to his men. "Take him down. Just keep him alive," he ordered, his voice icy. As Gare turned to leave, he glanced back at his men. "He's not someone to deal with carelessly, so don't let your guard down." The guards drew their blades, each one exuding a deadly professionalism. Copoka tilted his head slightly, cracking his neck. "Isn't this guy a total thug, bestiarty?" he muttered, almost amused. Meanwhile, Xing, still watching from outside, observed Gare leave the room, speaking on the phone. Zhou quickly slipped away, his mind racing as he pieced together what he'd overheard. "White Dragon, his sister, is this about her?" Inside, the guards charged at Copoka, their blades gleaming in the dim light. "Bring it on, you bestiardies!" Copoka shouted, his voice echoing with defiance. One guard lunged at him, blade first, but Copoka sidestepped and tripped him with a swift kick. As the man fell, Copoka drove his blade down, piercing the guard's back. Blood sprayed like a crimson fountain. Another guard attacked from behind, but Copoka spun, his movements fluid. With a downward kick, he disarmed his opponent, and as the guard stumbled, Copoka plunged his blade into the man's throat. Blood splattered across the room, painting the walls in gruesome red. The scene devolved into chaos as Copoka fought like a demon unleashed. One guard's head flew through the air, severed cleanly by Copoka's blade. Others fell in quick succession, their screams silenced by Copoka's unrelenting precision. His clothes and face were soaked in blood, but his expression remained cold, unfeeling. Xing, watching from a safe distance, could barely believe his eyes. This guy, he's not just skilled, he's a killer without hesitation. Zhou's mind raced. At this rate, things are going to spiral out of control. Amid the carnage, Copoka advanced toward the last remaining guard. The man tried to crawl away, but Copoka's boot came down hard on his back. "Now only you're left," Copoka said, his voice like ice. The guard begged for his life, but Copoka's blade silenced him, adding another body to the blood-soaked floor. Copoka wiped the blood from his blade and strode toward the door. Outside, Xing tried to approach him, but Copoka brushed past without a word, his focus solely on Gare. Gare, still on the phone, turned at the sound of Copoka's voice. "Why-oh," Copoka called, his tone deadly. Joriai's eyes widened in shock as he saw Copoka, covered in blood. Copoka took another step forward, his blade glinting ominously. "Where are you going without finishing our conversation, you pig bestiardi?" Still holding his phone to his ear, Gare stammers. "You."
"How?"
Copoka, his eyes gleaming with a malevolent light, strides forward, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Your underlings are all dead. Why are you even asking?" His fists remain tightly clenched, his presence radiating an unrelenting menace. From a shadowy corner, Xing watches in horror, his face slick with sweat as he struggles to comprehend the overwhelming force before him. In his mind, he grapples with the thought. "What's with that guy?" Gare, his disbelief still evident, mutters. "You're saying everyone was defeated?" Ignoring the question, Copoka advances, his blood-streaked blade held firmly. With a voice as sharp as the weapon in his hand, he taunts. But still, the phone call isn't finished? Gare hesitates, his composure faltering, then speaks into the phone. "Seems like I'm tangled up with a rather troublesome guy." On the other end of the line, Mr. Mariong listens intently to the chaos in the background. Copoka interjects with cruel humor. "Is that your lover? Should I wait longer?" The mocking tone pushes Gare to end the call abruptly. Crushing the phone in his hand, he tosses it aside. Far away, Mr. Mariong, shrouded in darkness within a half-constructed building, closes his own phone. His face remains impassive, but his thoughts betray him. Could it be Yushu Zhijing? Slowly, he begins to descend a dimly lit stairwell, disappearing into the shadows. Meanwhile, Gare turns his full attention to Copoka, who stands ready, blade raised. "Is it finally over?" Copoka growls. Gare removes his coat and tosses it aside with deliberate calm. Rolling up his sleeves and loosening his watch strap, he tightens it around his fist, his expression now deadly serious. "Though it's unfortunate," he says in a low, trembling voice, "you won't be able to hear the answer." Copoka smirks as he lowers his stance, preparing to strike. "I see," He replies with a wicked grin. Then shall we first hear the sound of a pig being slaughtered? In an instant, Copoka lunges forward, his blade aimed to kill. Gare, however, remains unmoved. With astonishing agility, he sidesteps the strike with ease, causing Copoka to momentarily falter. For a pig bestiarity, aren't you quite agile? Copoka sneers, his blade arcing back for another strike. Blow after blow comes, but Gare evades each one with uncanny precision, his movements fluid and calculated. In a sudden counterattack, Gare shoves Copoka back with one hand while delivering a powerful punch with the other. But as he withdraws his fist, he realizes too late that Copoka's blade has torn through his right arm, leaving a gash from which blood pours freely. Copoka pauses, his lips curling into a sinister smile. How about this? He taunts. Gare glances at his injured arm, analyzing the attack. An irregular strike based on quick mobility, he thinks, calculating his next move. Despite the wound, he launches into a series of rapid punches, alternating between his left and right fists. Copoka dodges effortlessly, slicing Jorai's left arm in the process, sending more blood spraying across the room. The two combatants clash in a dizzying display of speed and power. Copoka manages to slash Jorai's abdomen, but in retaliation, Gare lands a devastating elbow strike that sends Copoka crashing into a glass partition. Recovering quickly, Copoka rolls to the side, shifting his stance to gain a tactical advantage, though he briefly rests on one knee. You look exactly like a rat bestiarity, Gare growls, still standing tall despite his injuries. Copoka, breathing heavily, replies, You're advancing while blocking? What incredible endurance! Rising to his feet, he locks eyes with Gare. At this rate, it'll take more than half a day. Gripping his blade tightly, Copoka announces, I'll end this in one shot. Charging forward with full force, he aims for Jorai's throat. At the same time, Gare readies his fist for a counterstrike. As their attacks collide, Copoka evades Jorai's punch and delivers a lethal slash across Jorai's neck, or so he believes. Before Copoka can react, Gare grabs him by the collar and lifts him into the air, slamming him into the ground with a force that leaves Copoka momentarily stunned. Xing, still observing from the shadows, can barely contain his awe. He's tough, and using a strategy that relies on tremendous endurance. Xing mentally pieces together Jorai's tactics. Though it seemed like he was allowing one-sided attacks, he was avoiding fatal blows, making his opponent impatient, and leaving vital points open to lure them into a trap. Truly the worst possible match for a swordsman. As Copoka struggles to rise, Gare removes his shirt, revealing a massive dragon tattoo sprawled across his back. Xing gasps, his mind racing. That tattoo. The Triad. Memories flood back to him. The men Copoka saved him from earlier, their behavior, and their insignias. His breath catches as a terrible realization dawns on him. It can't be. Gare steps closer to Copoka, who uses a nearby car to steady himself as he stands. You're rushing in without even knowing it's a trap, Gare says with a mocking smile. Copoka discards his glasses, his expression darkening. The bait must have been quite appetizing indeed. Tossing the glasses aside, he charges again, staying low and quick. This time, he wields two knives, slicing Jorai's arm once more as he evades another punch. Blood flows freely from Jorai's wounds, yet he remains unfazed. I'm starting to see the end, Gare mutters. Copoka turns his head slightly, revealing his chilling grin. The end, he says, his voice cold. It's just the beginning, you idiot. The scene abruptly shifts to Guangzhou, China, where three cars speed down a highway. Inside one of the vehicles, a man in a white suit and glasses is Ryukai, the second son of Dragon Head, sits beside a woman in blue with purple eyes. Gazing out the window, he remarks, The Dragon Head personally summoned me to Hong Kong. How many years has it been? Thanks to you. He glances at the woman, smiling faintly. It looks like I'm being invited in. Isn't it really nice, little sister? The scene transitions seamlessly back to Copoka and Gare, their battle reaching a fevered intensity. Copoka stands towering over Gare, his dual blades glinting with blood. Gare crouches below, clutching at his deep wound to slow the blood flow. His voice is hoarse as he mutters through clenched teeth, "Dual blades." Copoka's cold eyes lock on Garay, his expression unreadable, save for the faint curl of a wicked smile. A single drop of blood slides from one of his blades, splattering against the ground. Without a word, he launches himself at Garay, fueled by a feral rage. His movements are a blur, his attacks relentless. Garay tightens his fist, muscles straining as he meets Copoka's charge head-on. "Are you trying to corner me?" he growls. Copoka swings, but Garay sidesteps the strike. Pivoting on his heel, Copoka's momentum carries him into a deadly spin, his blade arcing toward Garay. The strike lands, slicing deep into Jorai's left arm. Blood sprays violently, staining the air and ground as Garay grits his teeth against the pain. The force of Copoka's spin sends him colliding with the side of a car, his back slamming against the metal. Garay glances at his wound, wincing before steeling himself. With a guttural grunt, he prepares for the next assault. Copoka uses the car as leverage, kicking off and flipping through the air with practiced precision. His blades gleam as he targets Jorai's neck, but Garay narrowly evades the deadly strike, rolling away at the last second. From the shadows, Xing observes the fight with mounting fascination. His thoughts race as Copoka's twin blades dance with deadly efficiency. Did he always have dual blades? Xing murmurs to himself, his keen eyes dissecting Copoka's technique. Against opponents who push with brute force, his voice trails off as Copoka presses his advantage, unleashing a flurry of slashes and strikes. Copoka's movements are like water, flowing smoothly around Jorai's attacks while returning sharp, precise counterattacks. Xing mutters under his breath, piecing it together. Dual blades, their advantage lies in their irregular attacks. With one movement, they perform two strikes, gaining a physical edge. As the fight drags on, that difference only grows. Jorai's frustration mounts. Every punch he throws is met with evasion, every defensive maneuver countered with a fresh cut from Copoka's blades. Xing narrows his eyes, his voice barely above a whisper. The truly infuriating thing about dual blades is how effortlessly this man wields them, as if they're extensions of his own body. His combat sense and skill are on another level. Copoka slashes Garay again and again, each cut methodical and punishing. Garay, growing desperate, begins to act without thinking. His anger overtakes him, clouding his judgment. Copoka capitalizes on every misstep, his attacks slicing deeper. Yet Garay manages to block a knee strike aimed at his face, grabbing one of Copoka's blades mid-swing. Blood seeps from his hands as he tightens his grip, refusing to let go. Copoka's eyes widen momentarily in shock. Xing, watching intently, mutters, "That person's level, it's also quite high." But this dual blade technique, paired with that level of body coordination, Garay sees his chance and swings a powerful punch. Copoka reacts with lightning speed, dropping one blade to deflect the blow and countering with a strike to Jorai's chest. The impact sends Garay stumbling. Copoka follows up with a brutal knee to Jorai's face, the blow so severe that blood sprays from his nose like a fountain. Garay collapses to the ground, his body battered and broken. Copoka stands over him, his blood-soaked clothes clinging to his body like a macabre uniform. His expression is icy, his gaze sharp as a blade. He mutters, "It's too much." Taking a slow step forward, his boots squelch against the bloodied floor. Garay lies prone, barely conscious. Copoka kneels, leveling his blade at Jorai's face. "Now, try blabbering a bit," he demands, his voice low and threatening. "What kind of relationship do you have with my younger sister?" Garay coughs weakly, blood flecking his lips. This is absurd. His voice fades, broken by pain. Copoka presses the blade against Jorai's throat. "Before you die, tell me and then die." Xing, stepping closer, interrupts the tension. "These guys, it seems they're mainland Triad," he says. Copoka's head snaps up, his glare shifting to Xing. "What?" Xing gestures to Jorai's fallen form. He wasn't just a simple onlooker. Isn't that so? Joriai's eyes shift to Zhou Xing, recognition dawning on his face. You, he rasps, a weak smile tugging at his lips. I thought I'd die like a dog, but I'm going to cause chaos before I go. Copoka's patience snaps. Funny, he snarls, his voice laced with fury. Gare chuckles darkly, blood trickling from his mouth. Regrettable, but my role ends here. In a final, shocking move, he grabs Copoka's blade and plunges it into his own throat. Blood gushes from the self-inflicted wound as Copoka stumbles back, stunned. This bestiality, deliberately. For a moment, the scene is silent, save for the sound of Copoka's labored breathing. Zhou Xing exhales, breaking the stillness. If they're going this far, he picks up Joriai's coat and retrieves a phone and photograph from the pocket. He examines the picture, a younger woman, and says, "It seems your sister is deeply entangled with some nasty people." Copoka's eyes narrow. What? He asks, his voice low and dangerous. Zhou Xing holds up the evidence. There's a high chance she's still alive, he says with a knowing smirk. I'll dig into these documents. Why don't you go relax at a sauna or something? Things will get ugly if I don't clean up here first. Copoka glares at Zhou Xing, his body tense with emotion. But his gaze shifts to the clerk girl, still cowering on the floor, and he takes a deep breath. Zhou Xing claps Copoka on the shoulder. I'll contact you again soon, he says before pocketing the photograph and walking away. The scene cuts to the Hong Kong Triad headquarters, where Lu Wangxing gazes out the window. His son, Lu Yuan, paces the room in agitation. Calling them to Hong Kong?
What are you thinking? He demands.
Lu Wangxing responds with cold detachment. I told you I would take care of it. Their tense exchange is interrupted by Milin Zhou Xing, who steps into the room and bows respectfully. I, Milin Zhou Xing, greet the dragon head. The reveal sends a chill through the room. The mysterious informant has just entered the lion's den. Milin Zhou Xing entered the room, his head lowered in deference as he knelt on the polished wooden floor. The scent of oolong tea lingered in the air as Lu Wangxing, the dragon head, sipped from a small wooden cup. His sharp gaze flickered to Zhou Xing, then to his son, Lu Yuan, who sat tensely across the room. Lu Yuan's eyes darted between his father and the kneeling Zhou Xing, the muscles in his jaw tight as he wondered what might be unfolding in his father's mind. The thing you told me to look into the other day, Zhou Xing began, his voice low but steady. Lu Wangxing gently placed his cup on the table. A faint furrow formed between his brows, betraying his irritation. It doesn't seem to be good news. This is about branch head Ryukai, Zhou Xing replied. At the mention of the name, Lu Yuan's face darkened. He leaned forward, his voice sharp and urgent. Ryukai, what is all this talk about? Father, his shout echoed through the room, startling Zhou Xing for a moment, though he remained kneeling, his face unreadable. Lu Wangxing raised a calming hand, a faint smile playing on his lips. It's okay. Explain to me. Zhou Xing nodded. In the past few months within Hong Kong, those conducting prohibited business have been identified. Prohibited businesses? Lu Yuan interjected, his tone edged with disbelief. Zhou Xing met his gaze briefly before continuing. Yes. Businesses like human trafficking and drug distribution that we, the Triads, have forbidden to maintain our relationship with the public security. Lu Yuan exhaled sharply, turning his face away as if to wrestle with the implications. Following your instructions, Dragon Head, we trace their roots, Zhou Xing explained. As a result, I found that it's not an external force, but a Triad branch outside of Hong Kong. Lu Yuan's fists clenched and he growled. What? His frustration seeped into every syllable. Are you saying it's in Guangzhou? No. It's Ryukai? It's not confirmed yet, Zhou Xing replied. But the dragon head is currently making that speculation. Lu Yuan turned toward his father, his voice rising in anger. Father, how can you say it's just a speculation? Ryukai has wanted to get involved in those businesses for years. Lu Wangxing's calm demeanor didn't falter. He picked up his cup, the steam curling lazily upward as he spoke. It's just a speculation. Zhou Xing remained silent, watching the exchange with the vigilance of someone who knew when not to intervene. After a pause, Lu Wangxing poured himself more tea and looked at Zhou Xing. So, what's the new information? Zhou Xing straightened slightly, still on his knees. The personnel we planted in the Guangzhou branch to monitor branch director Ryukai have been disappearing one by one over the past 1 or 2 months. Now, the last operative has also lost contact. Lu Wangxing nodded thoughtfully, his expression unchanging, but Lu Yuan slammed a fist against the armrest of his chair. Killers? 9 people? What are they trying to do? It seems they're using 9 dragons as their code name, Zhou Xing added. Lu Wangxing's lips curved into a sharp smile as he murmured, Kowloon, 9 dragons. Isn't this Hong Kong? How interesting. Lu Yuan exploded, his anger boiling over. That Ryukai bastard. This is a rebellion, father. Call him now and interrogate him. Lu Wangxing stood, setting his cup down with deliberate calm. That man wants to become the leader, but he sees only an inch ahead, not the whole picture. Lu Yuan bit his lip, his head bowed in shame as his father approached him. Lu Wangxing placed a firm hand on his shoulder. The snake, because it resembles the dragon, foolishly thinks it can become one. But during my time in this position, such a thing never happened. Do you know why? Lu Yuan, sweat beading on his brow, nodded slowly. Because you pulled out all of them before the snake could bare its teeth. A toothless snake is no longer a threat, Lu Wangxing affirmed. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yes, Dragon Head, Lu Yuan replied, his voice trembling with resolve. Lu Wangxing turned his gaze toward Zhou Xing. Until the succession, the snake will raise its coil. Find its snake den. Yes, Dragon Head, Zhou Xing replied without hesitation. After the meeting ended, Zhou Xing stepped outside, the heavy wooden door closing behind him. He pulled a photograph from the inner pocket of his coat, a picture of Copoka's sister. He studied it for a moment, his mind racing. Could she be one of the 9 dragons? He muttered to himself. There's nothing confirmed yet, he thought, slipping the photo back into his pocket. It would be best to keep silent for now. Later, at Victoria Peak, Zhou Xing and Copoka sat at a small outdoor table near a bustling shop. The chatter of tourists filled the air as they discussed the latest developments. 9 dragons? Copoka asked, sipping from his juice with a guarded expression. Zhou Xing leaned back, holding his own drink. Yeah, that's what it's called. They seem to be killers supported by a triad from the mainland. Copoka frowned. What's the triad from the mainland? If Hong Kong is the headquarters, think of them as branch offices spread across the mainland, Zhou Xing explained. But these branches tend to act independently, which causes complications. A power struggle?
Copoka asked.
Zhou Xing sighed. Something like that. The important part is that the 9 dragons are connected to the mainland, not Hong Kong. But he hesitated, stirring his drink with a straw. It's clear they have clues about your sister. Copoka's expression hardened. So, we're chasing them. Zhou Xing nodded. I've already set up a meeting. It's about time he arrives. As they spoke, a figure ascended the stairs leading to the viewpoint. His blue trousers and blonde hair caught the sunlight, his confident stride exuding arrogance. What kind of person calls me all the way up here? He muttered to himself. Zhou Xing's eyes narrowed. Looks like he's here. The man reached the top, pausing briefly as he ran a hand through his hair. The name appeared in bold letters across the screen of their thoughts. Blue Dragon Zhao Kanzhou, one of the 9 dragons. Zhao Kanzhou, the blue dragon, ascended the stairs to the top of Victoria Peak, his expression fluctuating between calm and irritation. As he reached the summit, he glanced around, taking in the scenery, his face darkening with frustration as the surrounding noises of tourists and children grated on him. Unable to contain his annoyance, he let out a sharp groan, almost childlike in its petulance. Copoka observed Zhao Kanzhou's erratic behavior from a distance, his brow furrowing. With a sly smirk, he turned to Zhou Xing and asked, Is that guy supposed to be the demon dragon? His tone was laced with skepticism, his words cutting through the tension. Zhou Xing, equally uncertain and still doubtful of Zhao Kanzhou's true identity, shook his head. No, he replied thoughtfully. He probably didn't come in person. Even if he did, there's no way to confirm if it's really him. Taking a deep breath, Xing removed his glasses, his movements deliberate. He cleaned them carefully with a cloth as he continued speaking, his tone measured. Right now, for us, whether he's the demon dragon or not is less important than, he paused, handing the glasses to Copoka with a faint, almost mischievous smile. Copoka accepted the glasses, his expression sharpening as he gazed into their polished lenses. The reflections staring back at him seemed to blaze with intensity. He muttered, "What are we going to do now?" Then, with a sense of finality, he slipped on the glasses. Xing, now gazing out at the panoramic view of Hong Kong, spoke in a quiet but confident tone. Victoria Peak is one of the highest observation points in Hong Kong. As he spoke, the bustling activity below became evident. Tourists snapping photos, families gathering, and couples strolling hand in hand. That's why so many people visit here every year, Xing continued. They either take the peak tram or walk up. The same goes for when we go back. There are only 2 routes. He held up 2 fingers to emphasize his point. Copoka's expression turned cold and analytical as he processed Xing's words. So, he said, his tone cutting, we have no choice but to move along a limited path with an unspecified number of people? Xing nodded, his response brief but affirming.
Yeah.
It's perfect for tailing. Still pondering, Copoka furrowed his brow and asked, But didn't you say you had an appointment? His gaze shifted toward Zhao Kanzhou, who appeared to be waiting, his restlessness evident in his body language. Xing stretched his arms behind his back, his demeanor relaxed yet calculated. Looking up at the sky, he replied, We'll wait too.
What?
Copoka's voice carried a hint of disbelief. Xing closed his eyes briefly, as if savoring the moment, and asked, What would a snake that failed its hunt do? Copoka remained silent, his curiosity piqued, but his mind unable to grasp the answer. Xing smirked, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Since it came up empty-handed, he explained, won't it return to its snake den? Understanding dawned on Copoka's face as Xing elaborated, we'll quietly follow that snake and let it lead us back to its den. Meanwhile, Zhao Kanzhou stood by a light post in the park, his impatience growing. He checked his watch once more, sighed deeply, and muttered under his breath, his frustration evident. The scene shifted to a shadowy room where the 9 dragons had convened. The suddenness of the meeting was marked by urgency. Lu Kai's unexpected arrival in Hong Kong and the death of Parangare, the wave dragon, demanded their attention. In the dimly lit space, 4 figures were gathered. The red dragon, a man with a cloth tied around his head adorned with cryptic symbols, leaned against the wall, his expression unreadable. He broke the silence with a question, his tone measured. Suddenly, a 9 dragons meeting? The lustful dragon, a woman lounging with a cigarette between her fingers and a wicked smile on her face, replied, I hear Mr. Lu Kai is coming to Hong Kong soon. Is that why? Her voice carried a hint of intrigue, her demeanor playful yet calculating. The black dragon, seated with a sword resting across his lap, joined the conversation. But I don't see Azure Dragon or Wave Dragon, he observed, his tone low and contemplative. Near the window stood the demon dragon, the leader of the 9 dragons. His presence exuded authority as he finally spoke. Wave Dragon is dead, he declared, his voice heavy with finality. The room's atmosphere shifted. The lustful dragon's playful demeanor faltered as she stammered, Wave Dragon? The red dragon remained silent, his expression impassive. The black dragon leaned forward, his gaze intense. The one who killed Wave Dragon, who was it? Demon Dragon responded, his tone calm yet chilling. We don't know yet. But one thing is certain, they're looking for White Dragon's past identity. The mention of White Dragon drew reactions. Black Dragon, curious, asked, speaking of White Dragon's past. The lustful dragon interjected, wasn't she just a lowly kid sold as a slave? Why are they after something like that? Demon Dragon's expression darkened. If they're still searching, he said, it means the plan hasn't hit a snag yet. The red dragon finally spoke, his voice steady. Whether that's their headquarters or not is the key point. Demon Dragon acknowledged the comment, his voice tinged with tension. They were the ones who asked to meet first. The lustful dragon pressed further. What about those who contacted Wave Dragon by phone? She asked. What's with those guys? Stepping into the light, Zhao Kanzhou, the blue dragon, volunteered. I'll go, he said, his smirk oozing confidence. I'm too curious to see their faces to hold back. Demon Dragon handed him a small, mysterious object, its surface glinting like polished stone. If it's confirmed to be the headquarters, hand this over, he instructed. If not, kill them. Back at Victoria Peak, Zhao Kanzhou checked his watch again. His patience wearing thin, he muttered, I have to meet them first to decide whether to kill or spare them. With a determined stride, he began moving. Copoka and Zhou Xing observed him closely. Zhou Xing handed a small device to Copoka. Take this, he said. It's a radio. Let's split into 2 groups and follow him. Both placed wireless microphones in their ears, syncing their movements. Zhou Xing reminded Copoka, remember one thing, the purpose of tailing is to follow, not to kill. Copoka, already moving, cut him off. I got it, he said curtly. Zhao Kanzhou lined up for the peak tram, his demeanor calm but alert. Copoka whispered, looks like he's planning to move by tram. Zhou Xing nodded. Blend in with the crowd and follow him like flowing water. Zhao Kanzhou, sensing eyes on him, glanced back suspiciously. Copoka and Zhou Xing remained composed, blending seamlessly with the other passengers. On board the tram, Zhou Xing instructed over the radio, now that we're seated, just casually look at the scenery. However, his sharp eyes caught sight of 2 men in hats and long coats, their presence unsettling. When the tram stopped, the 2 men disembarked, following Zhao Kanzhou. Listen without turning around, Zhou Xing whispered to Copoka. 2 people are tailing us now. Who, us or him?
Copoka asked.
I don't know, Zhou Xing replied. You keep following him. I'll handle these 2. As Copoka kept his focus on Zhao Kanzhou, he suddenly lost sight of him. Panic flickered across his face. Damn it, he muttered, pushing through the crowd. A voice stopped him in his tracks. Was it you? Turning, Copoka locked eyes with Zhao Kanzhou, the blue dragon. His gaze was icy and piercing. The one who killed Wave Dragon? He asked, his voice a dangerous growl. Zhao Kanzhou stood with an unshakable blaze in his eyes as he faced Copoka in the middle of a dimly lit street. The tension between them felt thick enough to slice. With his gaze drilling into Copoka, Zhao Kanzhou, known as the Blue Dragon, demanded, Is it you? The one who killed Wave Dragon? Copoka blinked. His brow furrowed slightly. The name Wave Dragon stirred nothing in his mind. He didn't know who Zhao Kanzhou was talking about. There was silence, a pause that carried too much weight. Zhao Kanzhou let out a sigh, sharp and deliberate. His tone turned mocking but deadly serious as he leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing. A pretty bird. You're not from Hong Kong, are you? The words hit Copoka like a punch to the gut. He froze for a moment, a bead of sweat slipping down his temple. He could feel his pulse quicken. Damn it, he cursed silently. This isn't good. His mind raced. It wasn't hard to see that Zhao Kanzhou was toying with him, yet somehow, the blue dragon seemed to know too much. Zhao Kanzhou tilted his head slightly, almost amused, though his eyes remained cold and calculating. Are you a Korean Chinese? Or Korean? Copoka's hand instinctively moved to his waist, where his blades were always kept, just out of sight but always within reach. With a low stance, his voice came sharp and defiant. What does that matter anyway? Zhao Kanzhou smirked, taking a step forward. His movements were fluid and unnervingly calm, as though the street belonged to him and the moment was his to dictate. Land prices here are high, Zhao Kanzhou said, his words slow and deliberate, so there aren't many places to sleep. He paused, his face betraying a hint of a smirk as he stared Copoka down. So, I'm trying to give you a special delivery service. Zhao Kanzhou inched closer, their faces nearly level. His voice dropped to an iron edge. But shouldn't I know where you've been rolling around before I send you? Copoka tensed, his muscles tightening as his mind drifted to something Zhou Xing once told him. Hey, remember one thing. The purpose of surveillance is to follow, not to kill. With a quiet sigh, Copoka muttered, Huh? Surveillance, my ass. His hand slid behind him, fingers wrapping around the hilt of his blade, ready to draw, when suddenly, two unknown men burst onto the scene. They came charging, their intentions unmistakably hostile. Zhao Kanzhou glanced at them. He shifted in an instant, his demeanor transforming into that of a mischievous child. He blew a mocking raspberry before turning back to Copoka with a feigned pout. How, you weren't alone? Zhao Kanzhou's voice carried an edge of disappointment. He ran a hand through his hair with dramatic flair. I'm a bit disappointed. And then, as if the situation hadn't spiraled enough, Zhao Kanzhou turned and bolted, his speed explosive. Copoka blinked, stunned for half a second. What the hell is going on? He thought, adrenaline now spiking as he gave chase. Out of the corner of his eye, he spotted Zhou Xing running after the two mysterious men who'd appeared earlier. The chase was chaos. Zhao Kanzhou ran like a madman, his speed unnatural, cutting through the crowded streets. The two men who'd appeared were now pursuing both Copoka and Zhao Kanzhou, their motives still unknown. Zhou Xing, panting and clearly annoyed, shouted into his radio, his voice breaking through Copoka's earpiece.
Hey, what's going on?
Copoka barked back, trying not to lose focus. What do you mean, what's going on? I'm chasing like crazy. No. What did that guy say? Zhou Xing demanded. I don't know. He was asking if I killed someone called Wave Dragon. Zhou Xing's voice dropped a note, turning grim. That guy was Wave Dragon, he muttered to himself. His mind flashed back to when Copoka killed Parangare. That was Wave Dragon. Meanwhile, Copoka ducked and weaved through the crowd, narrowly avoiding a collision, until he tripped into a bottle stand, sending glass shattering to the ground. Looks like we screwed up the surveillance, Copoka grumbled. What's next? Zhou Xing, still struggling to keep up, barked back. What choice do we have? We have to catch him and make him talk. Up ahead, Zhao Kanzhou skidded to a stop near an escalator. Without hesitation, he jumped onto the railing and slid down with ridiculous ease, landing on the ground below in one smooth motion. Copoka wasn't about to lose him. He followed suit, leaping onto the escalator railing and sliding down as well. When he landed, Zhao Kanzhou turned, looking genuinely impressed. You're pretty good, huh? Copoka, panting and furious, growled back. Shut up. He drew his blade slightly, his voice low and deadly. The game of tag ends here. Before they could engage, the two unknown men caught up, both armed with blades. They lunged toward Zhao Kanzhou and Copoka, without warning. In an instant, it was chaos. Steel clashed against steel as the street exploded into violence. Zhao Kanzhou shoved one of the men back with his blade, pointing at Copoka accusingly. What? Weren't you on the same side? Copoka, wielding both blades now, countered. That's what I think I should be saying. The two mysterious men stood their ground, their faces like stone as they prepared to strike again. But before they could move, Zhou Xing finally caught up, panting as he stumbled down the escalator. Hey, he shouted. All eyes turned toward him for a split second. Zhao Kanzhou let out a long, exasperated sigh. This is totally a mess, he grumbled before, yet again, breaking into a sprint. Copoka cursed under his breath and tore off after him. The two unknown men followed, their footsteps thunderous behind them. Zhou Xing stayed behind, too winded to keep up, and shouted in frustration. Damn it! The chase led them to another escalator. This time it was packed with people. Zhao Kanzhou, unfazed, jumped to one side, then kicked off the wall, flipping to the ground below. Copoka mirrored the maneuver with incredible precision, defying gravity as he ran along the wall for a few steps before landing cleanly. The two mysterious men hesitated, unable to replicate the acrobatics. They resorted to shoving their way through the crowded stairs, shouting at people to move. Zhao Kanzhou sprinted toward a train platform. Without breaking stride, he leapt through the open doors of a moving train. Inside, he rolled to absorb the impact and rose swiftly, catching his breath. Behind him, Copoka followed suit, dashing into the train just before the door slid shut. He stumbled for a moment before regaining his footing.
Hey!
Copoka shouted. Zhao Kanzhou turned, his face breaking into a grin. Weren't you supposed to go home? Copoka's voice was like ice. Cut the bull ***. I have something to ask you. Shall we talk? Zhao Kanzhou laughed darkly. Oh yeah? That's good. I also have some things to verify. He drew both blades, his eyes glinting with deadly intent. However, I'd like to avoid boring talk. This is more my style. Copoka drew his own blades, one in each hand. His voice was cold. Why is it that this guy and that guy don't understand when you try to talk? Zhao Kanzhou's grin widened. Oh, a knife wielder? Nice to meet you. They lunged at each other, their blades flashing as the light from the sun. As Copoka and Blue Dragon jumped inside the train, the two unknown men who were chasing them, along with Zhou Xing, were not able to get on the train and remained behind. Zhou Xing reached the point where they had entered the train. He took a breath, sweat pouring from his face like he had taken a shower of sweat. The two unknown men began chattering, and one of them said, I missed it. Zhou Xing, still panting, called out to them, Hey. The men fell silent and said nothing. Zhou Xing, clearly irritated, asked, What's with you guys? One of the men, turning to face Zhou Xing, responded, It seems like we should be the ones doing the questioning. Zhou Xing's expression turned sharp, his mind racing. He thought to himself, Secret forest. The scene shifts to the inside of the speeding train. Copoka and Blue Dragon clashed their blades in a flurry of strikes, their movements a blur of steel and fury. As their blades locked, they came head to head. Blue Dragon smirked and asked, Your tailing was terrible, but are you any good with a knife? Copoka, his face boiling with anger, snapped back, Knife work? Something like this. He pushed off the ground with his feet, rushing forward and launching an aggressive strike at Blue Dragon. Zhao Kanzhou barely dodged the attack, twisting to the side, but Copoka capitalized on the moment, forcing him into a corner. Zhao Kanzhou deflected Copoka's strike by spinning to the other side and locking blades with him again. Suddenly, Blue Dragon swung a deadly strike toward Copoka's head. Copoka crouched, smoothly dodging the blow. In one fluid motion, Copoka spun and attempted to slice Zhao Kanzhou's stomach, but the Blue Dragon blocked it with precision. Both fighters separated momentarily, resetting their stances as they glared into each other's eyes. Blue Dragon, with a cocky grin, asked, You've got quite experienced knife-fighting skills. Copoka stayed silent, his cold eyes fixed on Zhao Kanzhou. Blue Dragon chuckled, dropping his stance slightly as if mocking him. Since it has a rough and gouging feeling, doesn't seem to be continental, Chinese style. Copoka, maintaining his calm composure, thought to himself, he's much stronger than the last guy. Tightening his grip on his blades, he adjusted their direction and braced himself. There's no use in dragging this out, I'll press hard. Blue Dragon, narrowing his sharp gaze on Copoka, observed the stance and muttered, I have a feeling about something. He pointed his blade at Copoka, smirking. Maybe Russia? Copoka lunged forward again, swinging his blades with precision, but Blue Dragon dodged and blocked each attempt. Copoka crouched low, stabbing upward, but Zhao Kanzhou narrowly evaded the strike. Their movements became a deadly dance, Copoka attacking relentlessly and Blue Dragon fending him off. A terrified passenger, the only other person in the carriage, watched the fight unfold with wide eyes. His voice trembled as he muttered, What in the world is this? The train driver, oblivious to the chaos, listened to music through his headphones, bobbing his head. He muttered to himself, Ahem, turn to the left. The driver suddenly steered the train hard left at high speed. The jolt sent Copoka and Blue Dragon off balance, forcing them to brace themselves by dragging their blades against the floor for support. The passenger shrieked, his suitcase slipping from his hands and skidding across the floor. Blue Dragon regained his balance first, noticing the suitcase at his feet. Seizing the opportunity, he picked it up and hurled it at Copoka. The suitcase blocked Copoka's view just long enough for Zhao Kanjo to launch a powerful kick. Copoka managed to block it, but the force sent him stumbling back. Both fighters paused, catching their breath. Blue Dragon stood upright and smirked. I think that's enough for introductions. Copoka stayed in his stance, unflinching. Zhao Kanjo raised an eyebrow and asked, "Shall we move on to the main?" Copoka glanced at the passenger and, without a word, picked up the suitcase and handed it back. He moved forward again, but in a flash, Blue Dragon delivered a surprise kick. Copoka blocked it, but was shocked by Zhao Kanjo's speed and power. The kick's force slammed Copoka against a steel rod, momentarily pinning him. With his blade poised, Zhao Kanjo demanded, "Let me ask first, why did you kill Wave Dragon?" Copoka, blocking an overhead strike, remained sharp and silent. Zhao Kanjo followed with a knee attack, but Copoka intercepted it. Zhao Kanjo shouted, "I'm asking why you had To kill him." Pinned, Copoka grinned with a cold expression. "What? Is this some childish comradeship or something? Both you and I are bottom feeders of the underworld." His voice turned cruel. *T. He probably died, because it was his time, right? Blue Dragon's anger flared. He lunged forward, but Copoka countered with a sharp blow to Zhao Kanjo's face, drawing blood. Zhao Kanjo stumbled back, shocked, as blood trickled down his cheek. The fight's momentum shifted. Copoka pressed the attack, forcing Blue Dragon to retreat under the barrage of blows. Regaining his footing, Zhao Kanjo put distance between them as Copoka, his eyes blazing with fury, shouted, "Now let me ask, what the hell are you doing with my younger sister?" Zhao Kanjo froze. Younger sister? His mind raced. Wasn't he looking for White Dragon? Copoka yelled again, his rage boiling over. "Yeah, my younger sister. You bestiardi. You guys took her away." Both men clashed again, their blades sparking like fire. Zhao Kanjo, still confused, asked, "Took her away? What's her name?" Copoka sneered, "Why? Are things starting to come back to you now that you're about to die?" Zhao Kanjo smirked back. "Since we're both bottom feeders of the underworld, you never know, right?" Before either could strike again, a sudden voice echoed in Zhao Kanjo's mind.
Siajin.
The train jolted as the brakes engaged, disrupting their balance. Zhao Kanjo's face grew tense. "Oh no, already." His mind raced. "Have you taken position, Shadow Dragon?" A sniper perched atop a building took aim. It was the same girl who had bumped into Xing earlier. Her finger hovered over the trigger, the crosshairs centered on Copoka. She whispered to herself, "Siajin." The shot rang out. The bullet shattered a window, heading straight for Copoka. He barely had time to react, staring at his death just inches away. Copoka dashed toward Blue Dragon, his determination evident as he prepared to strike. The sound of a distant sniper rifle being fired echoed through the chaos. The bullet was only moments away from Copoka when Blue Dragon, who seemed to have anticipated the attack, made a sudden, unexpected move. Without hesitation, he sprang forward and delivered a powerful kick to Copoka, throwing him out of harm's way. The force of the kick sent Copoka crashing into the side of the bus, shattering a window. Glass shards scattered as Copoka tumbled through, landing hard on the ground outside. He rolled to mitigate the impact, gritting his teeth against the pain, and quickly got back to his feet, his body tense and ready for another fight. Standing back up, Copoka glanced at Blue Dragon, his mind swirling with questions. The sniper's bullet had missed him entirely, and the one responsible for that was his very enemy. His eyes locked onto Blue Dragon, who stood tall and calm, his expression unreadable.
"Why?"
The question burned in Copoka's mind. Why would he save me? Blue Dragon continued to meet Copoka's gaze, neither moving nor speaking for a moment. Then, in a deliberate motion, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small box. With a flick of his wrist, he tossed it toward Copoka. Copoka caught it instinctively, his hands steady despite his confusion. Blue Dragon's lips curved into a faint smile as he raised a hand in farewell. "I'll see you again," he said, his voice calm yet firm. Copoka stood frozen, the box gripped in his hand as Blue Dragon turned and walked away. But there was no time to dwell on the interaction. Copoka was still aware of the sniper lurking nearby. Without hesitation, he sprinted toward the nearest cover. The sniper girl, perched in her concealed position, scanned the area with her scope. Her finger hovered over the trigger as she spotted Copoka moving. But by the time her crosshairs settled on him, he had already disappeared behind a column. Lowering her weapon slightly, she tilted her head, her expression shifting to one of mild amusement. Through her scope, she had glimpsed the box Copoka was holding, the same box given by their leader. A smirk played across her lips as she shouldered her rifle and vanished into the shadows, leaving the scene. From his hiding spot, Copoka watched her retreat, his breathing shallow but controlled. He waited until he was sure she was gone before exhaling deeply. His grip tightened around the box as he turned his attention to it. Opening it cautiously, he found 3 golden pills inside. The strange contents deepened his confusion. "What is this?" Copoka muttered to himself, staring at the shimmering pills. The scene shifted to a blue car speeding through the city streets. Xing was at the wheel, a cigarette dangling from his lips as smoke curled around him. In the back seat, 2 men sat silently, Left Shadow and Right Shadow, the ones who had been pursuing Copoka earlier. Xing glanced at them through the rearview mirror, but chose to remain silent. The car came to a stop in a secluded area, free from prying eyes. Xing stepped out, stretching lazily as the other 2 exited as well. Leaning casually against a car door, he finally broke the silence. "So, you're men of Lord Lu Yuan, huh?" he asked, his tone laced with disinterest. Left Shadow adjusted his hat and replied, "Lord Lu Yuan does not want even the slightest variable in the succession." Right Shadow chimed in, his voice sharp. "To that end, he wants direct control over the 9 dragons matters." Xing chuckled, taking a long drag from his cigarette before exhaling the smoke into the night air. "A direct order from the dragon head takes precedence, no matter what Lu Yuan wants." Left Shadow interrupted, his tone icy.
"No."
"This is what the future dragon head desires." Xing raised an eyebrow, his smirk widening. Still, shouldn't there be some proper conduct? Wouldn't it be better to give notice before meddling in someone else's territory? Left Shadow's expression remained cold as he replied, "It means we can't trust your side. You've caused too many incidents." Right Shadow nodded in agreement. "How many bloody incidents in Hong Kong have you handled arbitrarily?" Xing shrugged nonchalantly. "I have the authority. Small mishaps during operations are common. Besides," he added, his tone turning pointed, "I'd say the secret forest's covert investigations into dragon heads' subordinates cross a bigger line." Left Shadow narrowed his eyes. "Why don't you file proper reports before making such accusations?" Right Shadow leaned forward slightly. "And there's the matter of that sunglasses-wearing guy, Copoka. His movements don't match those of a regular operative. Who is he?" Xing hesitated briefly, his expression unreadable. Then he smiled and replied, "Why bother? He's just someone I hired, a Russian friend who's proven quite useful. You could call it an investment for contingencies." He turned as if to leave but paused, raising a hand dismissively. "Anyway, if you're done, go on your way. And if we meet again, pretend you don't know me." As Xing walked away, Left Shadow called after him. "Wait." Xing stopped and turned as Left Shadow handed him a phone. "It's Lord Lu Yuan. Take it." Xing hesitated before taking the phone, placing it against his ear. As he listened, his thoughts turned inward. Lu Yuan's already acting like the dragon head? Later, Xing drove the same car, Left Shadow and Right Shadow in the back seat. He lit another cigarette, his mind simmering with frustration. Lu Yuan's already bringing aids without my knowledge and having me followed. Too bold, even for him. He glanced at the two men in the mirror, shaking his head slightly. Impatient as the succession approaches. Aren't you Lu Yuan? Throwing the remnants of his cigarette out the window, Xing made a silent vow. I must speak with the dragon head about this. At Hong Kong International Airport, the tension was palpable. Xing stood among rows of Triad members lined up in two opposing formations. Lu Yuan was at the forefront, flanked by left shadow and right shadow, his expression sharp and commanding. As the airport doors opened, everyone turned to see who was arriving. First, two figures emerged. One was a towering man with white hair, his imposing height and broad shoulders making the guards murmur in awe. This was Great Dragon Chao Ren, one of the 9 dragons. Beside him was Lesser Dragon Chao Chen, a refined man in a blue suit holding an umbrella. As the two stepped aside, another figure emerged, a man with red sunglasses and a confident smirk.
It was Ryukai.
You've worked hard, Lu Yuan, Ryukai said, his voice smooth and mocking. Lesser Dragon Chao Chen chuckled, while Ryukai continued, It feels strange introducing myself to my own biological brother, doesn't it? Finally, a woman stepped forward from behind him. Ryukai gestured toward her. Come and greet them, he urged. The air grew heavier as the woman approached. Recognition dawned on Xing's face, his composure faltering for the first time. It was White Dragon Seo Gina, one of the 9 dragons. As the girl stepped forward, Ryukai gestured toward her, his voice calm, yet commanding in the charged atmosphere. Everyone, this is Lin Zixia, he announced, glancing at each of them in turn as though daring anyone to question him. Xing's gaze locked on her, his mind spinning. He knew he had seen that face before, the unique features, the pale skin, and those striking purple eyes. The memory surged forward unbidden, bringing with it the image of the photograph Copoka had shown him months ago. Though their ages differ, albino with purple eyes, he thought, his brow furrowing. The resemblance was undeniable, but it wasn't just her appearance. Xing's mind zeroed in on the connection. That appearance is clearly Copoka's younger sister. His teeth clenched as he replayed the details in his head. A name surfaced amidst his racing thoughts. Seo Gina. The contradiction was glaring, but Xing needed answers. His voice cracked through the tense silence, laden with confusion and frustration. But she's Lu Kai's real sister? He demanded, his eyes darting between Ryukai and the girl. What the hell is going on here, damn it? Ryukai's demeanor shifted subtly, his gaze narrowing. Before he could respond, Lu Yuan stepped forward, his anger evident in his every movement. Your younger sister? Lu Yuan hissed, his voice dripping with accusation. What kind of scheme is this, Ryukai? The accusation hung in the air, thick with tension. The girl lowered her gaze, feigning shame, while Ryukai's expression darkened further. Scheme? Ryukai repeated, his voice low and sharp. His eyes bore into Lu Yuan's, unflinching. You've got some nerve saying that to my face, Lu Yuan. In one fluid motion, Ryukai stepped closer, placing a firm hand on Lu Yuan's shoulder. His grip was steady, almost casual, but the cold menace in his tone left no doubt about the power he wielded. We share the same mother, Ryukai said evenly, his gaze unwavering. Not the father. The revelation hit Lu Yuan like a blow. His thoughts raced as he processed the information. So they're half-siblings? Ryukai stepped back, the faintest smirk tugging at his lips as he gestured toward Lin Zixia. The girl hesitated briefly before stepping forward. Lu Yuan coughed, his composure slipping. Watching the two of them standing side by side, Xing couldn't suppress his thoughts. Looking at them like this, it's hard not to believe they're siblings. Lu Yuan pressed a hand to his forehead, shaking his head in exasperation. Father will surely be thrilled about this, he muttered under his breath, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Abruptly, Lu Yuan turned to his men. His voice was sharp and commanding as he issued the order. We're heading to headquarters. Yes, sir. The Triad members responded in unison, bowing before following their leader out of the room. As they left, Ryukai's lips curled into a sly smile, satisfaction glinting in his eyes. The scene shifted to a bustling street teeming with activity. Copoka moved briskly through the crowd, his phone pressed to his ear. His expression was grim, his sharp eyes scanning the surroundings as if searching for something or someone. He reached a nondescript building and entered, climbing the narrow staircase with deliberate steps. Reaching a door, he knocked twice, the sound echoing in the quiet hallway. "Come in," came a voice from within. Copoka opened the door and stepped inside, closing it firmly behind him. Before he could say a word, Marina was on him, grabbing him by the collar with both hands. "What the hell were you thinking?" she shouted, her voice a mixture of anger and frustration. Copoka remained silent, his face devoid of expression as he allowed her to vent her fury. "What's with all this knife-wielding and gunslinging chaos you've been causing?" Marina demanded, shaking him slightly. "I told you not to get involved with the Triads, didn't I? Just because someone's cleaning up after you, you think you can do whatever you want." Her words came rapid-fire, each one sharper than the last. "I told you," Copoka said finally, his voice steady and calm. "I'm looking for my sister." Marina's eyes narrowed, and her grip loosened. Her anger gave way to a mocking tone as she released him. "Oh, aren't you the protagonist of some drama?" she sneered, turning away from him. She began pacing the room, her words biting. "It's only been a few days. What is this situation?" Copoka reached into his pocket, pulling out a small box. "I know it's shameless," he said, extending it toward her. "But please help me out." Marina took the box reluctantly, opening it to reveal a set of shimmering golden pills. Her eyes narrowed as she inspected them. "This is Lai Cha," she said finally, her tone serious. Copoka's brow furrowed. "Lai Cha," he repeated, unfamiliar with the name. Marina nodded. "It's a drug that's been circulating recently in Hong Kong and parts of mainland China. It's distributed through an extremely limited network, so it can't be obtained through typical channels." She closed the box and handed it back to him. "In other words, there's a high chance that whoever gave this to you is the manufacturer." Copoka's grip on the box tightened. "We'll have to trace the distribution line for this," he said firmly. Marina sighed. With a succession right around the corner, drugs and firearms, such bold moves. It's a sign that Guangzhou is preparing to make a major move against Hong Kong soon. Her tone shifted, laced with concern. "If you keep pursuing this, you might get caught up in a war between the Triads." Copoka's expression hardened. "I don't care what those bastards are doing," he said coldly, slamming his hand on the table. "This is the first lead I've found in years," he continued, his voice rising with emotion. "And I'm not going to waste any more time." Marina leaned against the wall, watching him closely. "So, you're going to act right away? What about Zhou Xing?" Copoka's phone buzzed, cutting off his response. He glanced at the screen to find a message from Zhou Xing. "Call me when you see this message." Pocketing the phone, he nodded at Marina. "Thanks for the advice." As he left, Marina shook her head, a hint of a smile tugging at her lips. "You've grown, but you're still such a kid." In the headquarters of the Nine Dragons, the atmosphere was heavy with tension. Blue Dragon stood before Demon Dragon, his posture stiff as he delivered his report. "I handed over the Lai Cha," Blue Dragon said carefully. "Is his origin already confirmed?" Demon Dragon asked, his voice cold and unyielding. Well," Blue Dragon hesitated, his mind scrambling for an answer.
"Damn it.
How should I explain this?" Before he could respond, Shadow Dragon's voice cut through the room. "This is the headquarters," she said, stepping forward. The flicker of her cigarette cast brief shadows across her face as she continued. "I looked into those guys a bit. Left shadow, right shadow. Lu Yuan's bodyguards. Those two are from the back alleys, and they recently moved to the headquarters, right?" She exhaled a plume of smoke, her tone sharp. "No matter how much I dig, I can't find anything beyond information favorable to the headquarters." Finally, the scene shifted to a bustling port where a man with a scarred face and a cold, menacing gaze stepped off a boat. The air around him seemed to freeze as he moved with calculated precision. It was Li Chen, the top-tier assassin from the mainland, ready to make his move. The scene shifts, revealing Lu Yuan heading towards the headquarters, accompanied by Ryukai and Zhou Xing, each traveling in their respective cars with their bodyguards. Inside Lu Yuan's car, he sits in the front seat, occasionally glancing into the rearview mirror to observe Ryukai, who sits casually on the back seat, gazing out the window at the passing scenery. Breaking the silence, Ryukai comments on Lu Yuan's maturity with a smirk, noting that age seems to have added a bit of wisdom to him. Lu Yuan, wearing a frustrated expression, turns his head slightly to question Ryukai's remark, his tone filled with unease. Ryukai responds with a sinister smile, teasing Lu Yuan about surrendering the back seat as though acting like an older brother. Lu Yuan exhales deeply and swiftly denies any such intentions, clarifying that it was merely due to an unexpected guest. His gaze shifts once more to the rearview mirror, where Ryukai's sister, Lin Zixia, sits quietly, listening to the exchange without a word. Meanwhile, in the other vehicle, left shadow and right shadow exchange intense stares with Great Dragon Chao Ren and Great Dragon Chao Chen. The atmosphere grows heavy as neither side breaks their gaze. Even the driver senses the tension, his mind racing with thoughts of confusion and dread. In his own car, Zhou Xing lights a cigarette, contemplating whether the dragon head had truly summoned Ryukai directly to the headquarters. His thoughts drift to a past conversation with the dragon head, recalling the ominous words regarding the succession. Growing frustrated, Zhou Xing crushes the cigarette box, discarding it out the window. He wonders about the decision to involve someone as dangerous as Ryukai in the inner circle, questioning the dragon head's motives. Lighting another cigarette, he continues to reflect, pondering what reason could justify such drastic measures. His lighter rests on the passenger seat beside him. A sudden notification on his phone interrupts his thoughts, a message from the Russian hunter, promising an imminent call. Zhou Xing smirks knowingly. As the group arrives at the headquarters, Zhou Xing exits his car, observing Ryukai and Lu Yuan standing nearby as Lin Zixia steps out of her vehicle with assistance from a guard. Great Dragon Chao Ren and Great Dragon Chao Chen follow close behind, trailed by left shadow and right shadow. Zhou Xing's phone rings. Upon seeing the caller ID from the Russian hitman, he answers and inquires about the situation. Whatever news he receives unsettles him, his expression darkening as he repeats the name, Raicha, in disbelief. His eyes shift towards Ryukai before telling the hitman he will follow up soon. Ryukai notices Zhou Xing's gaze, their eyes locking momentarily. Breaking the silence, Lu Yuan speaks up, reminding Ryukai that it has been nearly 10 years since their last meeting. Ryukai smirks at the remark, agreeing on the passage of time. As the group proceeds toward the building, they are greeted by a tall man with an emotionless face clad in a long black coat. He is introduced as Su Jiwu, one of the 4 commanders of the Triad and the great general of the main headquarters. Ryukai surveys the temple before them, recognizing the Yellow Dragon Temple as the Triad's central headquarters, a strategic stronghold at its core. In his thoughts, he reflects on its significance as both the Dragon Head's residence and a symbol of ultimate power. The very ownership of this place marks one as the ruler of the continent. Approaching Sujiwu, Ryukai senses the aura of the man, understanding why challenges are not tolerated here. Sujiwu, the Dragon Head's personal guard commander and a master of the flowing stars, maintains strict control over the headquarters, ensuring absolute security. Upon arrival, Ryukai and his underlings surrender their weapons to the guards, as is mandatory before setting foot inside. Lu Yuan watches the process with a sinister smile, sneaking glances as the disarmament takes place. Climbing the stairs with the others, Ryukai observes the next layer of security at the gate. There stands Ling Gui, known as the Fist King, towering with a terrifying presence and a noticeable scar across his face. Another of the 4 commanders of the Triad, Ling Gui is a boxing master said to be unrivaled. Ryukai reflects on the danger, realizing that facing such a man unarmed is akin to standing between a tiger and a wolf. As they pass Ling Gui, Chao Ren, one of Ryukai's underlings, locks eyes with the formidable commander. Continuing forward, Ryukai glances toward the top of the temple, thinking of yet another figure. This man remains a legend of the Triad's blood era and the pinnacle of the continent's martial artists, Han, another of the four commanders. Ryukai acknowledges his unmatched legacy, still reigning supreme within these walls. Then Ryukai considers the final key figure, Heilei, the dragon-head's shadow and personal bodyguard, ever at his side. Heilei, too, is one of the four commanders, completing the fearsome quartet that guards the Triad's legacy. From his room, the dragon head watches the group from above as they make their way through the entrance. Ryukai's gaze shifts to the temple's base, noting the presence of over 100 elite Triad bodyguards, each standing vigilant. Nearby, a glowing shrine catches Ryukai's attention. It is a place of honor, where funerals and memorial services are held for past dragon heads. In this moment, Ryukai acknowledges the history around him, recognizing the headquarters as an impregnable fortress that has welcomed even those who built the Triad's legacy. As they near the dragon head's temple, Ryukai removes his glasses, his eyes drifting toward the second floor where the dragon head stands, observing from his chamber. The wind rustles his hair as Ryukai smirks darkly, his thoughts turning to his father, the dragon head himself. With a sense of sinister amusement, he wonders about the very nature of blood ties, contemplating the irony of entering such a place without a single drop of blood spilled. Isn't blood connection truly fascinating, father? He muses silently, the weight of the moment settling over him.